Are you corn-placent on the conveyor belt of your life? Do you have control? Compare and contrast the corners of your discomfort as you contemplate where you are and why you are here. Do you even remember how you got here? You consume the content, contort the context, consult your computer. Are you confused? Concerned? Are contusions left on your heart from all the inconsistencies and contradictions? Do you need to be consoled? With every pro, there is a corn. For every corn up, a corn down. Maybe it all balances itself out in the end. A yin and yang conjoined at the creases, conspiring a plan. It's as simple as you make it. Only as convoluted as you. Do nothing. Be everything. Stay corned.
Hello, Shady Pines radio listeners. This is DJ Baby Snakes. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cornologues. This episode is a particularly special episode. I reached out to Jill Bolte Taylor via her website on a whim one day. I was like, I'm going to be starting the Cornologues again. I wonder if I could just email random famous people and they'll get back to me. And turns out Jill Bolte Taylor was down to do an interview. If you don't know who Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor is, she is a neuroanatomist and an author and an artist. She wrote My Stroke of Insight about her experience having a stroke that essentially wiped out the entire left side of her brain, and then the experience of recovering from that. I read it once in high school and read it once again recently. When her assistant emailed me back when I inquired about an interview, he said that I had to read her newest book, Whole Brain Living, so that we would have a more meaningful conversation. So I did that to prepare for the interview. And Whole Brain Living is about 4 distinct characters that live in our brains, and every one of our brains anatomically, and who and what those characters represent in yourself. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor does a much better job of describing these 4 characters in your brain than I would do, so you should really buy the book and read it. But it's kind of explaining the interactions of your left outer brain, your left inner brain, your right outer brain, and your right inner brain, and emotionally and cognitively what those characters feel like in yourself. You're going to hear a lot more about this in this interview, and I'll let her explain more. And if you're curious, beyond this interview, go buy the book. I'm very grateful I got the opportunity to talk to Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, and you guys are in for a real treat, so I hope you enjoy this conversation with this very interesting neuroanatomist and artist and human. I hope this conversation inspires you to delve deeper within yourself and getting to know your own 4 characters and how to work with them in your day-to-day life. And that in doing so, you can create a sort of symbiosis of self. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I just, I finished your book, Whole Brain Living, just yesterday. I've been reading it for the last month about, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I'm really grateful to be able to talk to you. I read My Stroke of Insight for a second time recently, and just had the harebrained idea to just like email you from your website, and was not expecting to get a response, and and I did.
I'm yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I will say that like, at first there was a degree of anxiety in interviewing you, because you're kind of like high profile in that you've written some best-selling books and had like TED Talks and stuff. But soon into reading your book, I lost a sense of that anxiety, just because you make it clear that you're very intentional with your time. So I feel confident that you want to be here and you're choosing to be here, which, I don't know, helps me relax a little bit. So thank you for being here.
And I'm friendly. Yeah, no, I'm a friendly girl. And didn't you write that you had someone close to you who had a stroke?
Yeah, no, it was on the left side of his brain. And it was less severe than your stroke, for sure. But it showed up in his personality through like almost like these light-hearted, childlike personality traits coming through more clearly when some more rigid, protective ways of thinking seemed to be more encumbered. And as kind of time progressed, I kind of watched his old like ways of thinking kind of come online a little bit more, but there was this window where it was almost like the stroke gave him some access to some parts of himself that were a little dormant. So
that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your book, Whole Brain Living, is themed around recognizing the characters within your own brain and figuring out how to work with them in responding to the world around you. And it really kind of brings a helpful and almost playful perspective to navigating your emotions through life. And I suppose I'll start by asking, like, how have your four characters been navigating your world today? Like, how has the interaction between them been recently? And yeah.
So for me, because I am so clear on who's who inside of me, I live with all four of them at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And my life becomes a negotiation between them about how I'm going to spend my time.
So you've gotten to a point where you have, like, full control, you feel?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I believe we all have the capacity for that.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And you don't...
Absolutely, 100%.
You don't feel like any of them momentarily steal the stage for too long with you? Like, you're always able to just bring them back in check?
Yeah, because they're in a constant negotiation. So say, for example, today, I mean, it's snowing out, I've got lots of snow on the ground, and I have booked my character one, be in front of the computer, speak to somebody, different things, and I package those, my obligations together so that the rest of the time I'm not that character. I get to be whoever I want to be. And whoever I want to be likes to play, and I do dirty play like stained glass or stone, so it takes big blocks of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to create a schedule where I'm going to be on the computer for an hour and then I'm going to go play for 2 hours and then I'm going to be on a computer for an hour and then I'm going to go play for 3 hours. I'm not going to do it that way. They know what they like, and my character one likes to go to work. She wants to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go to play, I like to go to play. And so they negotiated 6 weeks ago my schedule for now so that it's going to play out the way that I want it to play. And because I have negotiation between the different parts of who I am, everybody gets their needs met. And if everybody gets their needs met, I don't live with any anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Because because there's no conflict. And when you know who your parts are, and you're clear on who your different characters are, and you respect all of them, then the only one that's really going to, throw in a trigger potential is that little character 2, pain from the past. Mm-hmm. And that one can be triggered at any moment in time based on stimulation coming in or situationally. Mm-hmm. But if the others are so strong, then as soon as I feel that pain from the past or any kind of anxiety coming online, all characters come online, and we hold the space together.
Mm-hmm. And you talk a lot in Whole Brain Living about giving each character a degree of respect and recognize their purpose.
Well, just think about what you just said. I have a brain, mm-hmm. and my brain is made up of these beautiful cells. And these beautiful cells are organized into 2 emotional and 2 thinking modules of cells in my brain. Mm-hmm. In order for me to be a whole human, I have to get the best out of every cell in my brain. Mm-hmm. And if that means there are 4 characters in my brain, then each of those 4 characters is specifically designed to bring into my life something that I can work with, and of course I find that of value. That would be like saying, oh, well, I have cells in my brain that do vision, but I don't have any respect for my vision, my visual cells, so forget vision. Well, why would I do that? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't get rid of, sorry, I have dogs.
That's okay.
I wouldn't get rid of any of my sensory systems. I wouldn't get rid of my ability to move my body. Why would I get rid of either my emotional or thinking information? Because it's all information. Mm-hmm. And if I recognize that everything going on inside of me is a tool and information, then it's like, okay, how do I recognize that I'm in a scenario and now I'm being triggered for anger, or I'm being triggered for anxiety? So I can feel anger or I can feel anxiety and I can act that out in the world. Or I can use the rest of my brain to say, what is it about this scenario that I can learn from because I'm feeling emotionally triggered? Mm-hmm. And if I look at myself and recognize that that's information, for some reason, if I'm being triggered for anxiety or anger, I don't feel safe. And what is it about this situation that I don't feel safe? And how can I use the rest of my brain cells to really understand, where does that come from? Why is that trigger happening? And how can I heal that so the same scenario doesn't make me angry or anxious again? Mm-hmm. So that I can return back to calm. Because anger or an emotional trigger is information. It doesn't have to just be something going on inside of my brain that I then run on automatic. No. Mm-hmm. If I'm willing to reflect upon and explore that and try to understand what it's trying to communicate, then I don't have to feel angry or anxious again in a comparable situation. And that's growth. So I have these emotions so that I can grow from them. So I always say deep emotion is so important, but it's information, it's not meant to be a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be learning. Mm-hmm. And that's a choice that we can make.
One thing I kept thinking about in regards to character 2 is that it's clear that character 2 has a very distinct purpose in the evolution of like a human brain. But in this day and age in society, character 2 seems to be triggered a little overactively. So a lot of managing character 2 seems to be almost like these primal ancient sort of reactive feelings to like the threat of life-threatening sort of things, and with less actual life-threatening scenarios in our everyday life, it seems to be triggered by like writing emails or doing things that aren't actually that dangerous.
Well, you are wired for fight, flight, or go numb, flee. Fight, flight, go numb. And you're wired for that, whether it's a tiger or whether it is an alcoholic father or mother. And every time they come home or they start going into the bottle, you know what's to come. Just really ugly, aggressive personality. And you're a child and you're vulnerable. And there's really not a lot of escape. That wiring, whether you're going to be devoured by a tiger or whether you're going to be wounded by an alcoholic in your environment, someone who's there, it's the same circuitry inside of your brain.
Yeah.
And if I see a tiger, and as soon as I see a tiger, I say, oh my God, danger, what am I going to do? I'm going to fight it, or I'm going to run away from it, or I'm going to play dead and act, hide from it and hope for the best. And it doesn't matter what the predator is. If there's a predator, let's talk about test anxiety. Test anxiety, the test becomes the predator.
Yeah.
Because the predator is going to put me into a state of anxiousness, anxiety, and as soon as I move into that fight or flight, then I can no longer access the thinking part of my brain in order to perform on that test. So how do I manage the anxiety that I feel, whatever the predator is? And if I recognize when a predator comes into my presence, what I do is I automatically say to myself, this is anxiety. One, I label it. This is anxiety, or this is anger. I feel rage coming on. And then I go into my body and say, what is my body's response? What is anxiety? Not just at a cognitive level, an emotional level, but in a somatic body language. How does my body translate anxiety or anger? Well, when I get angry, I immediately feel this tension in my chest. As soon as I feel a tension in my chest constricts. As I constrict, my breathing becomes more shallow. I begin to clamp my jaw. I begin to furrow my brow. I begin to start darting my looking around, because now I'm looking on what are my options. Am I going to attack? Am I going to run? What am I going to do? So physiologically, I have this magnificent collection, this constellation of responses at the level of my body. And as soon as I start evaluating or enjoying and experiencing and in wonder of, oh my gosh, this is something that's been in humanity for as long as humanity's been here, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And as soon as I recognize that it is amazingly cool that I am even capable of experiencing anger or anxiety, and I can observe how it manifests inside of my body, as soon as I do that, I'm observing myself having a constellation of reactions instead of just being the reaction. And that's where people get stuck. If I'm stuck and I'm angry, I'm feeling angry, I'm madder than hell at you, and I'm going to just spew all my venom at you, and I'm just going to be angry, well, then anger has won the day. It has taken me over. But if I can step out of my angry part of who I am, and I can observe my anger with other parts of my brain and say, wow, what a magnificent experience that I'm capable of being angry. Now I'm observing my anger instead of simply being my anger, and it dissipates over the course of about 90 seconds. But the question is, do I want to? Or do I want to rant and rave and be my anger? And the thing about these deep emotions is they are so powerful, they are so delicious, they are so overwhelming that of course I want to be madder than hell at you, and I want to rant and rave. And I can rant and rave at you for hours. And every time I think about you 20 years later, I can still rant and rave about you because that's a group of cells inside of my brain. But the question is that who I want to be? How much time do I want to spend just being, if you will, a victim or a vehicle of my emotions? Or do I actually want to live a peaceful life and spend quality time doing things that I enjoy doing without all the drama?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I like your describing of emotions as delicious, especially in referring to anger, because I was thinking about that the other day. And there is almost this like righteous, energetic sensation of anger. Like it can feel good to stay kind of mad and like this. Yeah. But you gotta catch yourself and see if you're choosing to do that for the right reasons.
Well, if I become my anger, that's all I am. Mm-hmm. And that means my brain, I've been hijacked. I have been hijacked. The best of who I am, the peaceful warrior that I am in the world, has been hijacked. And I have become an expression of my worst self. Mm-hmm. How much time do I want to spend being my worst self versus being my peaceful warrior? I would rather be a peaceful warrior. Mm-hmm. And I prioritize being a peaceful warrior. And the thing about being a warrior is that a true warrior is an instrument of peace. Now, you may have a lot of different ways that they're finding their way to get to peace, but ultimately the goal of a war is to get to peace. But again, if we're just in the war being warriors, beating up on each other, then now we are just the war. We're not the warriors in search of peace. So I think it's important that we all ask ourselves, who do we want to be? And what part of me do I want to project into the world? And how much responsibility am I willing to accept in order to be the person that I want to be all the time?
In my stroke of insight, you referred to the stroke kind of reverting you to an infant state within a grown woman's body. And that made me think about how infants seem to have this sort of sheer, pure perception of reality. And then as they spend time existing in the world, they create kind of these boundaries and edges which inherently create this separateness from themselves and the world around them.
You just described what happens when a baby is born into the world as a whole brain, mm-hmm. and then the left brain comes online, and its jobs are to take the big picture mm-hmm. and to break it down to boundaried pieces mm-hmm. that then get managed with either language or categorizing, organizing, identifying, all of that.
Mm-hmm. And it made me wonder, as an infant, it's kind of like both hemispheres serve as a right brain, and then the left brain slowly comes online. Why is it always the left side? Why is it consistently on the left? Does it ever flip-flop? Are there some people whose left brain tendencies show up on the right side? Why is it that it so consistently manifests on that side of the brain when they're such similar structures?
Well, for most of us, we're right-handed. Mm-hmm. And the right hand is controlled by the left brain. Mm-hmm. And the right hand becomes an instrument in the world in a way that the left hemisphere often doesn't. Mm-hmm. So when we're taught to poke at things, or to organize things, or to build things, or to learn language, all of that then gets organized in the left brain. So for most of us, that's the way the gig goes. And then I think over time that's just the way that the biology and genetics ended up setting the brain up for success. So then when you end up with someone who's left-handed, left-brained, left-handed, in order to get, if they're still left-brained, because that's where language is. And for humanity, that's where language, the speaking, the ability to comprehend and understand language is in the left hemisphere. So if I'm left-handed, now I have to get information through my left hand into my right hemisphere and then across over into the left hemisphere. Mm-hmm. And so when you stop and you think about how smart, there is really a remarkable level of smart in left-handed people generally across the board because they're forced to use both of their hemispheres. Mm-hmm. And in cultures like in some of the Asian cultures where they read vertically, mm-hmm. they actually have, they tend to recover from stroke, for example, or other brain trauma more quickly because there's this generalized reciprocation of same function in both of those hemispheres. Mm-hmm. It's really very interesting the way that the brain organizes information based on language.
Yeah, that makes me think about music. And I'm a right-handed person, but in reading Whole Brain Living and like trying to analyze and identify my 4 characters, I feel like a lot of me is kind of right brain dominant. And thinking about like, well, your right hand is the tool for things. And so, like, it goes to your left hemisphere to kind of process and define things, and that's why that sort of happens. But if you're right-handed and then you grow up doing something very artistic, like music, where you have sort of like an interaction between the 2 hemispheres of, like, kind of this practical sort of knowledge and practice and routine inherently linked to this, like, well of creativity and emotive sort of forces, that could kind of be a reason for this link between the 2.
Was there a question in there?
It was mostly just a thought. Just kind of...
Yeah, I think so. But then the look you gave me was like, what do you think about that? So, you know, the brain does differentiate in its skill sets. Mm-hmm. And the biggest difference, I believe, there are 2 primary differences. One is the right hemisphere is right here, right now. Mm-hmm. It's a present moment machine. Mm-hmm. The left hemisphere has linearity across time. So our past, our future, that's all going to be in the left hemisphere. Mm-hmm. Me, the individual, I, Joe Bolte Taylor, I'm in the left hemisphere. A tiny little group of cells about the size of a peanut gives me my name, and it registers. It's the little microchip that has everything Joe Bolte Taylor, mm-hmm. right? What do I like? What colors do I like? What kind of food do I like? What are my favorite restaurants? Who are my friends? What's all the data of my life? That's in that left hemisphere. Well, the right hemisphere doesn't have that. And the right hemisphere doesn't care about that because the right hemisphere, it's right here, right now, and it's not about Joe Bolte Taylor. It's about the experience of the present moment. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in the experience of the present moment, it's like, well, what do I want to do in the present moment? And that's when I go and I pull out a guitar and I write a little song, or I go into my art space and I make a mess, and I'm not about what it is. I'm about just the process, or the creative process of the experience of spending time in the present moment. I think James Taylor got it right when he said the secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. Period. The secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. Because if I enjoy the passage of time, how I'm doing, how I'm spending my time, I'm not bored. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not bored, then I'm engaged. And if I'm engaged, then I'm curious and I'm creative and I'm open and I'm entrepreneurial and I'm probably pretty social. Mm-hmm. So in that passage of time, that is a concept of peacefulness, because I'm in my bliss, if you will. And so that's where your creativity in music, or your creativity in art, or your creativity in language, but your creativity comes from using tools of that left brain, but the experience and the passage of time. So I think that as you look at how you organize your life, how you organize your time, the choices you've made about who do you want to be when you grow up, it's based on how do I live a life where I enjoy the passage of time. I personally do not want to go be an accountant. I don't want to spend that much time with numbers. That is not an enjoyment for me. Now, I know people who adore that stuff. They should be the ones who are doing that. You know, people who want to read a lot, or people who want to do whatever those things are. So you know, finding your own joy. Where do you get to express yourself, and how do you get paid to do what you want to do? And the reason I grew up to be a neuroscientist was because, well, lots of reasons, but one of them is I chose science. I'm an artist in my heart. I went to my first boss at Harvard and I said, look, I'm an artist in my heart, but I have chosen neuroscience to make a living. Give me projects where you actually care about the aesthetics, and we'll be a great team. And she was very smart, and she did exactly that. And my work was absolutely spectacular, because she didn't make me go do things that other people's left brains would love to do. It's like, nah, don't make me do that. Let me do something creative and intuitive and innovative, and I will be your top performer.
Yeah, that really is encapsulated very well. This is something I think about a lot, and just like figuring out how to be able to spend the most of your time doing something that you enjoy in a practical way. And I feel like a lot of people kind of get hung up on that. Like, they haven't quite figured out that, like, time and the present moment is like what you have, and like if you're spending 8 hours a day doing something that you don't enjoy, that's a lot of your life that's kind of taken away from you. So I feel like it should be like an utmost priority to try and tap into that and figure out that path for yourself.
And that's one reason why I like whole brain living. Because in whole brain living, if you recognize that you have these 4 very distinctive personalities at an anatomical level, who's dominant inside of you? Whoever's dominant inside of you may be very different character profile than who's dominant in me. You know, and if I really enjoy organizing and categorizing and being the boss and being that alpha type of personality, then that's that left rational thinking part of our brain. And some people thrive as that character, and hopefully they're in a job where they are expected to organize and organize people, be a manager, be a boss, think linearly, appreciate the hierarchy, play that game, because you're probably really good at it. Okay, well, what if I'm really good at it, but it doesn't bring me any joy, but it pays my bills? Okay, well then get one of those jobs that you're good at, let it pay the bills like I did with science, but then find these other parts of yourself where your joy may be. Where's your creativity? What do you do for fun? What makes you laugh? How do you get into your body? How do you express with your body? Are you interested in any of the arts, the expression of any of the arts? Nature, are you a nature buff? How do you choose to spend your time with joy? And then figure out, is there any way I can marry these 2 skill sets so that I can be more fulfilled for how I'm making a living, and so that it's not just a this and a that, but this or a that, but it becomes a this and a that. And it becomes more of a negotiation between the different parts of who you are, and you actually really start to thrive. Because if you're doing something out of resentment, you're not going to thrive with it. You'll be constricted.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing something because you love it, then, well, yeah, Jill, but I love doing my art, but I can't make a living doing it. And it's like, well, you know, there's creativity in that right brain of yours. Think about it. Look at the world. Don't put yourself in a box. Figure out how you might be able to shape your skill set in an environment where you can really contribute something positive using more parts of who you are. But you have to know who your parts are.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you know who your parts are, when you know who your 4 characters are, and they're all real to you, then it becomes a very real negotiation. Otherwise, we're just flopping our way through life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're following the whim. We're vulnerable to our emotions. We're vulnerable to drugs and alcohol. We're vulnerable to other pollutants that we can bring to our brain. And it's like this brain is the most beautiful, most magnificent, most spectacular gift the universe has yet created.
Mm-hmm.
And as humanity, at this point in our society, we pollute it. And it's like, you know, I don't personally understand that because I don't pollute my brain. I love my brain. I love having a clear mind. I love having the capacity to be who I want to be in any moment and not be vulnerable to any form of either an addiction or any kind of an unhealthy whim. I'm just not that girl.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much magnificence in what, you know, to me, I encourage people, look in a mirror, just sit there and park your butt in front of a mirror for 45 minutes to an hour and just look at yourself. Don't pick up the phone. Don't pick up the text. Don't interact with technology. Just look at yourself in the mirror and say, wow, I have eyes. And because I have eyes, I can see because literally 1/3 of the cells in my brain work so hard to manufacture my ability to have vision. And it's not just vision, but it's these pixels collected together in packages of pixels and then add motion and add 3D and add color. And it's happening instant by instant by instant. And it's like, wow, I'm just so cool because I have eyes and I can see. Then go through the same thing with your ears. Oh my God, I have the capacity because sound comes in as vibration from the external world. It goes through the little ear ossicles, pounds on the tympanic membrane, goes through these ear ossicles, gets caught into a viscous fluid that then has these little microfilaments, and it's communicating like little hairs to the auditory nerve cells, and then that gets moved into sound. I mean, we are such a miracle. And we spend so little time recognizing the miracle of what we are. And all you have to do is sit in front of a mirror and have that conversation with yourself. Oh my God, I have skin. I have skin that is between me and the external world. And it is specifically designed to protect me from all that is out there. I mean, we are this amazing, amazing creation of the universe. I appreciate that. And I encourage others to appreciate that too. This is all about focus on the wonder of you.
Mm-hmm.
You. Because you can have all this awe and all this wonder for all this other stuff, but if you don't have that awe and that wonder for you, where are you starting from? And when we start from the space of awe and sense of gratitude that I exist at all, everything changes.
Mm-hmm. And I could definitely have those snippets of moments, but and when I try to develop some sort of mindfulness practice at times, I really do try to drink in the moment when I have the wherewithal to do it, but it's more fleeting, and I feel like one of my struggles with that is there will be little harebrained thoughts of just that take you somewhere else. They're not necessarily bad thoughts, but it'll be oh, and then all the other creatures with sensory organs, then you go on that path, and then suddenly you're somewhere that's not just like being with yourself.
That's why I say do it for an hour, because the mind is going to dance away. Mm-hmm. But eventually it's going to get tired. Mm-hmm. And it's going to say, okay, it looks like we're here for an hour. Let's focus so that we can get what we're supposed to get and then get out of here. Right? And I don't mind that. And that's the beauty about that character one, left thinking part of the brain. It never shuts up. Mm-hmm. It never shuts up. And then that little character two, emotional, negative character from our past, of all our trauma and all our pain. And it's like, I'm not pretty enough, or I got a zit here, and now I'm just criticizing myself, right? And it's like, just watch that crap float through your brain. It's not who you are. Mm-hmm. It's one of your character profiles. So how much time do you want to spend in each of your characters? Who do you want to be? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, your life is going to be over, and you're going to look at yourself and you're going to say, wow, what did I do with my life? My one precious life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to have in perspective all throughout your life, because it's not like you're going to wake up when you're like 89 and be like, oh, wow. I don't know. It's like you're still going to be you in the moment when your life is coming to an end. It's still going to be a sense of like a similar familiarity. And I feel like it'll be more kind of jarring for people who don't take the time to recognize themselves and be in the moment throughout their whole life.
And recognizing one's value. Mm-hmm. I mean, we function in a society where if you don't look like the women in the magazine, then you're not good enough. And it's like, I'm sorry, that was someone's perception. Mm-hmm. I don't share that same value.
Yeah.
So I'm not wrong because I don't share that person's value. Mm-hmm. I have a different value. And I'm not afraid to have a different value because I'm being authentic to me.
And your stroke kind of made you, you talk about how it kind of made you sort of acutely aware of the different characters through half of your brain going offline temporarily. Which makes me wonder if, like, you tangibly feel like a different person, like in the sense of like when you're recalling memories of yourself pre-stroke, does it feel like you're remembering someone who isn't you, and what do like the memories pre and post-stroke kind of feel like to you?
So I can remember through my left thinking brain, which went offline and came back online, I can remember things from my past. Mm-hmm. But the emotion, that's where the trauma happened, and those were the cells that died. Mm-hmm. So even though both my thinking and emotional components of my brain went offline, left hemisphere, the emotion was like a mother drive completely cleaned. And then I had to begin from the stroke, where the thinking mind could go back in time once the traumatized cells could kick back on, heal, recover, and then remember. So I can remember things from my past, from my childhood, but I do not feel them. Mm-hmm. Because the feeling character got rebooted the morning of the stroke. So I spent 8 years during the process of recovery. Mm-hmm. So for 8 years, I focused on skill sets that I had lost. I had lost language. I could not walk, talk, read, write. I couldn't recall any of my life. So those were all skill sets that were gone. And as those skill sets, each of the skill sets in the thinking portion of my brain, that's a specific group of cells. That's where my language is. I speak, I comprehend, I'm capable of creating order, I'm capable of having judgment so that I can create order. I can give linearity across time. I have hierarchy. I can define the boundaries of where I begin and where I end. And as part of that comes the ego. So there are all these skill sets that I had lost in that portion of my brain. And it took 8 years for me to rebuild all those skill sets. But then it was a boom. All of a sudden, that character turned back on and said, wow, I'm back. Good job. And saying good job to all the other cells who had worked for 8 years to rebuild the skill sets, to rebuild that personality, that character profile. And then that character appears and she says to me, great job, I want to be the boss again. And the rest of my brain that had spent 8 years working so hard to rebuild her said, we don't think so. We don't think so. We are so grateful you're back. We are so grateful we have your skill sets again. But we are now a democracy inside of this head, and we value the collective, not the me. And the right hemisphere values are of the collective whole. We are brothers and sisters here on this planet. We are the human family. We really are. To the right hemisphere, that's all we are. And that's what we value. And so we're going to make decisions based on the collective whole. But the left hemisphere is going to say, no, it's about me, and I'm the center of the universe, and it's about me, and it's about mine, and it's about what I do, and it's about what I can control, and it's about my money and my house, and I want more, and everything, and it's me, and it's got to grow because there's hierarchy. And the right hemisphere is going, we're really glad you're back, but no, we're not going back to being the person we were before you went offline, and you're welcome to be a part of the whole. And it was like, okay.
It just goes to show that there's so many functioning parts of yourself that are there without your sense of self, that even maybe other people don't notice the absence of. It's just like that sense of, it's me. It feels so loud and important and all-consuming. But you're kind of proof that, like, it was at the tail end of your recovery where she came back online, and you had accomplished so much before that. And
well, she the way that the brain recovers is the focal point of trauma is the first to go offline and the last to come back. Because the trauma will begin at a focal point and then expand out. And when you recover, you begin with the expansion out, and then you bring it back to the focal point. And so I wasn't focused on being that ego center until enough of the other skill sets of her who define her constellation of abilities were back online. But you know, the thing about the ego and setting the ego aside is it's like, it feels like death. I mean, it does, except if you're forcing yourself. Let's say you want to do a meditation, and you're doing a meditation, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to sit here for an hour, and I'm going to be really bored to death, and I'm going to quiet my left hemisphere, and I'm going to ignore all the little things that it says to me, and oh yeah, I got to pick up bananas in the morning, and oh, you know, my toe, it really hurts, and you know, all these distractions of the left hemisphere that never shuts up. You know, it's never happy and it never shuts up. Well, it is happy sometimes, but that's conditional. But anyway, so it's just this gnawing, and then, but imagine when you're doing your music, you're not all tied up in your ego. You're writing your music. You're thinking about the next lyric that is a clever twist of sound, or how am I going to how I get my fingers to work on that? Because right here I want it to go, you know, or what am I doing? And when I'm focused on doing something like that, or I'm out carving stone and I'm just letting the passion run through me, and it creates and pulls out of the stone whoever's in there instead of putting someone in there. When I'm in this state of art and creativity and innovation, it's not about me and my ego. And it didn't hurt. Mm-hmm. Right? It doesn't hurt, because then I go back to my ego in an instant. It's right there. It doesn't go anywhere. It just becomes quiet. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I'm giving anything up. It's just I'm not putting the energy into me, the individual, right now. It's not all about me and my language and my schedule and my blah, blah, or whatever. Instead, it's just about being in the present.
In regards to death and kind of thoughts on death, do you feel like you, in your core, understand what it'll be like to die at this point?
Well, I did not die. Mm-hmm. You know, I all but died. Mm-hmm. But I did not die. And so, no, I don't know what it will be when I am no longer energy around this organic form. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't do that, right? I went as far away as anybody could possibly be in vegetative condition and cognitive disappearance as anybody could do without dying. But I didn't die. So I know what it is like to get to the space of feeling enormous and expansive and as big as the universe and connected to all that is, with no consciousness of this is how but I didn't die, right? I didn't disconnect. I was still energetically in relationship with my body. So I don't know what the next step is, but I got pretty close. I think I have a pretty good, I have zero fear of that. And I will welcome that. And I allow myself to move into that space almost daily, simply because it's such a blissful, peaceful place to be. But you remember those games where you have a sheet of of clear, and then you can lay another on top of it, and another on top of it, and another on top of it, and it's one of the ways that we would teach. Mm-hmm. And you could put like a brain down, and then you could put another clear piece down on top of it, and just outline the frontal lobe.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know this.
And then another one, and then you add the temporal lobe, mm-hmm. right? That kind of a thing. I don't remember what it was called, but okay, so think about the brain like that. Think about you like that. And if we look at the brain as these 4 different constructs of cells, then if when I'm born, I am a single cell, and that's all I am, and that single cell multiplies and divides its DNA, the DNA gets repackaged, and I'm in the womb for literally 9 full months. That is a long time. And I am multiplying my cells at a rate of 250,000 new cells per second. Mm-hmm. Per second. That's a lot of cells. So as you're sitting in front of the mirror, just recognize 50 trillion molecular geniuses, all of me. Oh my God. I mean, let's go back to the wonder. I can spend the whole conversation there. But anyway, so that's what I am. And so then I come out into the world, and that's what I am. I'm just this energy ball around these cells of my fetal body. And so what is my brain? My brain is still connected to the energy ball of the universe. And that is what's going on in that right thinking group of cells. I'm as big as the universe, connected to all that is. And then I connect with time and an attachment to actually engaging with my body and getting my body to move and having a somatic relationship between my brain and my body. And then it's like, oh, I can move my body and I have this movement. Okay, well, that's focused on that character 3, that right emotional, experiential tissue. So let's take that big character 4 now, add character 3, and now I can move, and then add another one, which is going to be the emotional system of the left hemisphere. And this is going to give me some linearity of time, and it's going to give me this deep emotion, because as I said Emotion is information. I'm not supposed to be the emotion. I'm supposed to look at the emotion and say, what is poking at me and triggering that emotion so that I can reflect upon it and heal that wound so that I can get on with my life and protect myself from that down the road, because the left hemisphere has linearity across time. And then put that last piece of vinyl down, which is that character one, left thinking, rational brain, which comes with education. So then what's death going to be? Death is going to be the reverse action. We're going to lose our social world. We're going to lose our social network. We're not going to be moving out into the world when we're on our deathbed. Our world is going to become more constricted and more quiet. And then the emotional piece is going to be less and less because we're not engaging more and more with things that are so scary. And then eventually the body is going to grow tired and weary, and it's going to stop moving. So we're going to remove that. And what do we have left? All we have left is the character 4, portal of energy to I am as big as the universe. I'm in the present moment, and I know what peaceful, blissful euphoria feels like. And then I dissolve out of the body, away from the organic, and I become whatever is beyond that I have yet to experience.
Oh, the brain is not the mind, and the mind is not the brain. No, the brain is not the mind, and the mind is completely different from the brain. Oh, the brain is not the mind, and the mind is not the brain. No, the brain is not the mind, and the mind is completely different from the brain. From the brain, from the